This topic keeps coming up, and I'm glad we're all here. I'm more glad that I get on recording to look Mr. Zapata in the eye and bring to all of the people the man who has done more research than anybody else I know on Proposition 13, outside of any of the attorneys or politicians that drafted the thing. There's a lot going on here in Southern California. I don't want this to turn into a political rant, Aaron, but let's talk about Prop 13 from an agent standpoint, and then what our agents need to know to be able to help their clients out, regardless of what happens with the vote.
Well, first of all, wouldn't you all agree that if there is significant changes to the law using a prop number, that it should be retired like a really good jersey number?
Like Kobe's jerseys
like
were?
Kobe's
Yes, you're right.
retired, right?
You're right.
So like Prop 13, once it changed how property taxes are assessed in 1978, should be forever more memorialized that there's never a Prop 13 again. Because the Prop 13 today on the ballot is confusing because it's not really regarding the original Prop 13. And so,
Aaron, why don't you start by paraphrasing for everybody, just in case they don't know what the original Prop 13 is.
Prop 13 basically said all real estate in California is going to be assessed based on a purchase price and then a cap of only 2% per year thereafter at a maximum increase. So if you bought a house 30 years ago, 40 years ago, your property taxes are pretty low. And that's across the board for commercial and for residential. And so the Prop 13 that's on the ballot right now is really a school bond bill where they're trying to raise $15 billion in funds to go out and, improve our schools today. But there's a lot of fine details that are just embedded into this bill that basically says that that's really a matching grant for local districts who now have to go out and raise their own funds and then apply for a matching grant from this $15 billion. And so it's really a form of double taxation. In one side, we have the local districts that now have to raise bonds in order to get access to this other side. When they do local bonds in your local market, it increases your property taxes because those get tacked onto your property tax bill. Okay. And although it's not adjusting property tax amounts and the assessor amounts, it's being logged on as an additional bill item on your property tax. And they've also increased the amount that the local districts can borrow by on average 50%. So if they could borrow 100 million before, now they can borrow 150 million. And so that's a lot more borrowing, which means those little inserts on your property tax bills are going to go up. One form of taxation. The other side is the government now has to figure out how in the world do we pay this $15 billion back? They're already spending over $3 billion a year paying back pre-existing bonds that they've already sold. And so that means one thing: we got to raise taxes over here on this side, which is your income taxes, your sales tax, whatever, however else they're going to grab taxes, they're going to raise fees over here. And so it's really bad. I'm against debt in that form and fashion. They've already received over $200 billion in the last 17 years for these kind of measures. The $200 billion have already been dispersed to schools for this kind of thing. And now they're looking for 15 billion more.
15 billion with a B.
Yeah. So let me just say this, Al, I don't know how much you know about this, but the reason it's real confusing is that coming up in the November ballot, and that's really the one we can do a whole podcast on separate from this because we've got a couple of months before that hits.
Right.
But that really is the most damaging bill to come across our ballot in a long time, because that one is not going to tell you, but that one is an attack on the original Prop 13. Right. So that's what's confusing right now. Today's bill is a $15 billion measure. The one in November, big time changes to California property taxes. And that's the one that we need to educate the public on, really on a separate podcast. But I'm voting no on both.
I agree with that. So let's give everybody in the real estate world, because that's mostly who's going to hear this message. Well, I guess the consumers, but from the agents, people are starting to talk about it. It's very confusing. The advertising is covering one part of it. I like to call it the rainbow and unicorn side of it. when actually there's a $15 billion play here behind it.
Yeah.
On the back of the taxpayers, the homeowners. What do the agents need to know? What do they need to do to educate and help the consumers, their clients right now?
Well, one thing they can do is they can go to my website or my YouTube channel,
Okay.
youtube.com/Aaron Zapata. I
Yes.
have a Prop 13 analysis on there talking about these numbers. I've written them in the description. I think that's an easy way to share that and to go look at it. But I think in general, they just need to say, do you want your property taxes to go up? And the general response is, well, I hear it's not about property taxes. And then the general response that all realtors should know is that when you vote yes for a local bond measure, whether it be schools or not, it could be your water district, it could be your pest control district. It doesn't matter. If you vote yes for a bond measure, read the fine print that gets tacked onto your property tax bill. So if you don't want property taxes to go up, then you vote no against the bonds. It's plain and simple, regardless what they're for. And so that's where I think we can get in trouble as realtors, is that we try to break it down. Like, do you like schools? Well, of course I love schools, but I don't want my property taxes to go up.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Interesting, a
the
lot
lack
behind it.
of accountability also kind of, you think about that, just keep taxing us and somebody's got to pay it, right?
Yeah. Well, I just saw an
we're paying it
article.
through tax. Yeah.
Well, and I just saw an article, the government, the lottery system is supposed to be giving billions of dollars
Yes.
to California schools. They just did an audit and there's like 69 million or 30 million, depending on which article you read, that's missing. Like, where did this go? Like, that's a lot of
Right.
money.
Yes. Yeah.
Our gas-
Money
We
keeps
had thoughts that
disappearing.
it was
Gas-
being mismanaged. We heard it, but now
Yeah.
it's being proven.
And
No doubt about it.
the price of gas, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
You go somewhere other state, and it's like $2. But the question I have for this, okay, so we know about this. We educate the realtors about it, right? So what kind of conversations should we be having with commercial property owners that we're thinking about selling?
Well, and that's regarding the November ballot.
Right.
That's the one that is going to impact all of them. Because if it does pass, then their properties, if they basically haven't been sold in the last 3 years, is likely to be assessed anywhere from twice to 4 times the value.
Right.
And that's
So-
property taxes. I mean, that's a big deal. So those are commercial conversations with our commercial
Right.
agents. I mean, commercial agents, our commercial owners, all those people need to hear about that one. And I hope people vote no on that
So
too.
if I'm a commercial owner, has a $4 million building,
Mhm.
and the only reason I didn't sell is because I can't find anything else, or my taxes are going to go up if I find something else.
Well, there you go. Your taxes are going up.
Anyways, right?
Mhm.
Anyways.
Okay. So maybe opportunities for those that do have to sell is created here.
Maybe.
Yeah.
For here's my concern, Aaron. We've
Okay.
talked about it with this whole thing, and trickle down is not my favorite word, but if the $4 million property owner decides to hold on to it and not sell,
Mhm.
his taxes are going to go up. And let's say his taxes for fun was $10 million or $10,000 a year when he bought it. And Aaron is telling us that $10,000 4 to 10 times, is that what you said, Aaron?
Anywhere from 2 to 4 times.
2 to 4 times. So if it goes 4 times, now
Wow.
it's quadrupled. It's $40,000. In that building is a 3-day suit broker that's renting that building. The taxes went up, the rent went up, the prices to the consumer went up. And if that happens, well, we can only assume that less people will be buying suits, and eventually businesses go out of business because of it. That's a 2-5-year plan. It could be more immediate in some areas, but that's the big concern that very few people are talking about through this.
Because even if he doesn't pass it down to his commercial business tenant, his cash flow has decreased.
Has decreased completely.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And, I work with a lot of commercial clients that are looking for retail space. And that is the question we now ask the listing broker is, what assessments are you projecting for this bill should it pass in November? And one of them came back and they said, well, we expect to pass on a cost of $3.67 per square foot per year to our tenants in that building. And that was a very specific answer. And I looked to that tenant and I said, okay, guys, your rent next year is going up by 20 grand.
That's right.
Just for your space.
Just like that.
Just like that. That's 20 grand out of your pocket as the owner, you know? And so he's like, ouch. And they were going to move into a bigger facility. And they purposely decided, we're not moving into a bigger facility. We need to maximize the amount of profit we can get now, because that's going to become less and less in the future.
You mean a $2 million shift makes a difference to a small business, Aaron?
Oh,
Interesting.
Big
time.
Right? A
And the
$20,000 bill, right?
And this has nothing to do with Prop 13 affecting residential taxes yet, right? The last piece of this that we haven't even mentioned yet, and you're right, we have to do a whole hour on this plus, Aaron, is the fact that if they get into one part of real estate with commercial, that opens the possibility of this and probability of this move into residential real estate. And the homeowners that have been there 30, 40, 50 years, our parents and beyond, right? Their property taxes double to quadruple like that. And that's all they're paying on their limited income now. Now they're no longer homeowners.
Yeah, right? It's just a really, you know, it's really unfortunate that, again, the government that we work under here in California is seeking to pad the budget with property taxes, with bond measures, with you name it. They're just increasing the cost for homeowners, for business owners, for school teachers. Everybody is getting affected by increased cost of living here in California. And it makes it difficult. It makes it difficult. But that's the nature in which we live. And, you know, it's not going away. Government's not going away tomorrow. And so we have to brace for it. We have to work extra hard. We got to close an extra deal next year. We have to, you know, cut costs so that our profit margins still stay strong. I mean, that's the conversation that every business owner, every homeowner has to, you know, tighten up the belt. And we know that in an economy that thrives on spending, that when our cost of goods go up, people spend less.
That's right.
And so it's the slow tightening of an economy that eventually slows everything down. And I pray that that's not in our future, but it looks like the handwriting is on the wall, and we will see how the consumers vote come here March 3rd and then again in November. That's right.